Today we have a very special guest from the National Historical Commission, who also happens to be a knight, Sir Emmanuel Clairo. Calairo.
Yes. Good
Uh,
morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone.
Sir, can you
Yeah.
tell me about your family?
Well, I stay here in Dasmariñas, Cavite, but originally I was residing in Quezon City in Novaliches, and my father was from is from Ilocos Norte, while my mother is going from Tondo.
How about your professional background, sir? Can you tell us a little bit about your professional background?
Well, I studied my Bachelor of Arts, major in Political Science, minor in History at the University of the East. And I took my Master of Arts in Teaching Social Sciences in the University of the Philippines College of Education, while my PhD in History, I took it up in the Department of History at UP Diliman also.
Very nice. I'm sure this is a treat for all our viewers around the world with your depth of knowledge about history, being a commissioner and being having an educational background with history. Um, Let me ask you, sir, how are you affiliated with the Knights of Rizal?
Well, since I think since 2005, I became a member of the Knights of Rizal because one of my colleague in De La Salle University, Las Marinas, is a very active during the time member of the Knights of Rizal. So he invited me, and we formed a group here in De La Salle University, Las Marinas. It's a chapter known as the Magpuri chapter.
And let me ask you, sir, is there when in 2005 when you were asked by this very active member of the Knights of Rizal, what made you uh, realize that this is a right fit for you, either personally or professionally?
Well, first, my colleague introduced me to the Knights of Rizal. He had some information about the organization, and during the time we don't have internet yet. No, the internet's not very much used. No? So we have some flyers about the Knights of Rizal, and aside from that, I'm already acquainted with some members, especially during December 30. There always a wreath laying ceremony. So Knights of Rizal is a very popular organization, and I myself, I believe in the ideas of Jose Rizal. So I think I will not be lost if I will become a member of this organization.
So it's just a natural osmosis for you to be a member of the Knights of Rizal because you have the
Yeah,
same wavelength, if you may say so.
I
Um,
think so, especially if you're in the academy, because most of the activities in the Knights of Rizal were basically academic in nature, aside from the social duties of the organization, but mostly the teachings and of the life and values of Rizal and cascading it to the students. No? It's very academic, I could say.
Sir, that's a good segue on the life and works of Jose Rizal. As you know, in history, there are turning points, fork in the road when you could have gone this way or that way, and it has its consequences. Now, I will give you three turning points in the life of Rizal. Uh, First, his refusal to join the Katipunan. He
Mhm.
wrote a manifesto while he was in Bagong Bayan
For
as a
Santiago.
prisoner, and it was not published. In the manifesto, he was saying that he does not believe that change should come from the bottom, but it should come from the top. In the manifesto, he did not um, believe in the armed struggle, but for reforms. So he made a decision there, although it wasn't published, as I said. Now the other one is Rizal could have had a son, and obviously we know what happened in Dapitan about the son, and he was not able to have a continuance of his line in the Rizal family. The other one is, as we know, Rizal had a lot of female friends all over the world, and really he was struck with Leonora Rivera all the time. But what if he actually wed in a foreign land? So those three turning points, sir. Which one do you think, sir, would have changed history for the better if those turning points went the other way?
Well, I think they're all no, the first turning point that you mentioned is something about social change, while the second turning point is more of a purely personal in nature. It's about I think it's about his son, no, Francisco, no? And the third one would be, I think another one is personal in nature because of the engagement with Leonor Rivera, which did not materialize eventually. No, um, um, for me, the first turning point, and I'm referring about his denunciation of the Katipunan as member, no? Because we have to put Rizal in his context, in his milieu, because Rizal was the one who sparked the revolution. Although his idea would be not to spark a revolution, but to spark a peaceful reform. However, it did not it did not went that way during that time because there are so many intervening factors. And the last, even though he made so many writings about reform, we know about the Noli Me Tangere, El Fidi, or even the writing of Morga, no? The Sucesos de las Islas, and so many articles and essays, no? But it did not even legislated a new policy about the Filipinos, well-being. That's why after the La Liga Filipina, there are some breakaway and established the Katipunan. And this is Bonifacio, Diwa, and Plata. So I could say that that's the turn of events. Rizal, we should put Rizal in the reform movement because he was the one who inspired other people to put up another stage in Philippine history, which is the revolution. No? And while in 1892 he was visited by Pio Valenzuela in Dapitan, and he was told that Katipunan was organized, and these were we are doing this for the revolution. Actually, he did not favor, and instead he recommend since it's already a revolution, he recommended other things. No, so um, I'm thinking that Rizal don't want us to be, to go on fire and eventually lost in the war. Because it's very important when Rizal advised Pio Valenzuela, if the revolution is imminent, and that's 1892, therefore you have to do these things. Number one, you should have arms. Okay, you should have arms, and second, support of the middle class, so that they will finance the revolution. And the third one would be there must be a good leadership uh, of this movement, because during that time, Pio Valenzuela already told Rizal that Katipunan is already existing, and we need your advice. So I think those three advice, actually, it was received by Andres Bonifacio himself. And when he learned that Rizal was not in favor of the revolution, he's very fuming mad, no? But at the end of the day, he followed all those things that Rizal mentioned.
Now,
Number one, arms, no? They gathered arms, but it's not very successful. Second, of course, the middle class don't want to be involved in the revolution because they're already they have convenient life. No? So what Bonifacio did, they forged the signatures in the documents, appearing that the middle class will be highly involved. And the third one, I think Bonifacio's already in the idea that his leadership is good enough to launch the revolution. But again, they did not launch the revolution. The Katipunan was discovered.
so sir, if you had the magic wand and this turning points in history, the three turning points in history that I mentioned, and you can only choose one, and this turning points would have made the Philippines so much better. What would it be if you were to revise history using those turning points? We're
Well,
using foresight. If he had a son, would had that made him different? If he stayed in foreign land because of marriage, would that have made a difference? If he actually supported the KKK just like his brother, would that made have a difference? If you have a magic wand or a crystal ball, and you can follow this route, which route in the turning point you think would have made the Philippines a lot more better?
I think the first one would be because the issue of the first one is highly national in nature. It's very nationalistic because it's about the winning the revolution. It's already in that phase. If Rizal, sided with the revolutionists, no. But again, that did not happen.
That's right.
Although he instigated already the revolution, that's why he
That's right.
was martyred in Bagong Bayan because
That's right.
he was considered an instigator of the revolution, although he denied it, no, because he believed in a peaceful reform.
Mhm.
So I think the first one, and I already mentioned to you that the revolution was launched prematurely. So, well, theoretically speaking, if the revolution was, if the Katipunan was not discovered, and the advice of Rizal was carried on by Bonifacio with enough time, then I think the revolution will be very successful, and we have another chapters in our history where the Americans will not mingle anymore. I'm sorry to mention that you're in Ohio.
No, that's okay, sir. That's okay.
Yeah. And the
So
second
yeah,
part
think
about if Francisco did not died during when he was in Dapitan, we have to remember that the reason why he was in Dapitan, he was apprehended, no? In Manila, and while just few days after he established the Liga Filipina, he was captured, no? And sent to Dapitan. I think even though if Francisco lived during that time, I think it would be in the same path. Although more personal, I think that Rizal will focus on because imagine this is the only time in his lifetime that he spent 4 years in Dapitan without any connection with the reformists. When he was in Dapitan, he did not do anything about reform. He just developed Dapitan. He became a community builder. No? So I think so because he's an exiled person during that time. He cannot move. No? So the change not too much, even though even Francisco did not die during that time. And on the
always
third part, yeah, on the third part, Leonor Rivera, why is it she's a
if he
turning
married
point?
one of his lady friends
Keeping, yeah,
and settled
yes,
in abroad.
in England, English, no? Well, I think again, if because Rizal already in Europe when Leonor Rivera met this engineer of the Gupan Railways. No? But supposing that
Kipling.
Rizal, hindi pa niya na-meet. No? So Rizal from Europe went back to Manila and continue his relation. Yeah, I think it will go again in the same way because Rizal, uh, because of his nationalistic sentiment, definitely he will go back again to Europe and wage reform. No, so Leonor Rivera will still again left behind in the Philippines because of personal, because of nationalistic purposes of Rizal. No? So if you will ask me to choose, I choose the first one.
I know Rizal left a trail of broken hearts, as they say. Sir, in you mentioned about Dapitan. Well, Rizal was in Dapitan after the purge, after the La Liga purge, wherein I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the only time he personally face to face met Bonifacio. Um, and then in that 4 years where he was in Dapitan, the 4 years in Manila, Bonifacio was working on the KKK. What
Mhm.
specific of these two men? I know they always want to have a schism about this two, but what commonality of these two men for you made them aspire for better, made them achieve under strenuous circumstances? One, Rizal was in the Pitan, banished from the family. Two, Bonifacio was really going underground and very engaging in very dangerous activities. What in these two men, what characteristics in these two men do you think was emulated in those 4 years?
It's
What's
still love of
commonality in
country.
these two people?
I think still love of country because loving your country is not only national, but you could express it in a local level, in the community level. And Rizal, devoid of his capacity or ability to go national, like reform. No? So he helped the community in the Pitan to develop their community. You know? He helped in the engineering works, lighting the street lamps. He made the irrigation canals. No, there's so many things he made when he was in the Pitan. He developed a community there, and I think that's very nationalistic also, no? Because you help your fellow Filipinos during that time. Whereas Andres Bonifacio in 1892, he established Katipunan on July 7. Again, well, I think the difference would be the threat because in Bonifacio's situation, there's a threat because Katipunan is it's illegal. You know? It's a secret organization, so it's very hard to organize. But I think during that time, Filipinos were already they want to join the Katipunan organization. So they started to develop chapters in provinces and in towns. So although it's very hard to organize one under Bonifacio, but due to the Filipinos' eagerness to join the Katipunan, so he developed it from 1892 to 1896. Comparing again to Rizal, Rizal, although it's not nationally it's passive, but locally it's active. It's
No,
also a public service.
yes. It's funny how within those 4 years, uh, Rizal's movement became more community based,
Mm-hmm.
while Bonifacio's movement became kind of like national or at least regional based at that point.
Yeah,
Okay, there's kind of a turnaround in emphasis in these two men because of necessity. Um,
yeah,
Now, Rizal had many vocations, sir. He was a writer, as you know. He was a sculptor.
yeah.
He even was involved in a play or two.
Mm-hmm.
He's a physician. What of the
Mm-hmm.
many vocations of Jose Rizal impressed you?
Wow. I think it's writing. I'm also a writer, and it takes discipline, hard work, and to be a writer. It's very hard to write, especially if you're pressured. And Rizal during that time is, he's under pressure because of his family, persecuted in Calamba, and he's writing something which is very historical, which is very factual about the Philippines. And if these facts will be discovered by the Spaniards, definitely uh, he will face the dark consequence of it. But still, he pushed for it. I think being a writer is a very hard thing. To manifest to do during those time, which is where censorship is very high. So it's really a challenge. So even me, I'm a writer. I wrote lots of books, but it's a different thing. I'm not pressured because of my yung death threats, no, or something else. Yeah.
In fact, yes, sir. You're correct about you saying that Rizal was a prolific writer and he wrote about things that got him in trouble. In fact, there's one of the 15 uh, points that he faced during his deposition was the essay called Kundiman. And with this essay, if I could read it to you, if I could ask for your indulgence, he says, "In the Orient beautiful, where the sun is born, in the land of beauty, full of enchantments, but bound in chains, where the despot reigns, the land dearest to me. Ah, this is my country. She is a slave oppressed, groaning in the tyrant's grips. Lucky shall be who can give her liberty." So that is a direct challenge. That's one of the most
Yeah.
subversive uh, essays of Dr. Jose Rizal. That's really got him in trouble because that was used against him during his trial.
Yeah.
Um, I I know as a writer, sir, you know that Rizal wrote two books, the two prominent books, the
Mhm.
Fili, the El Filibusterismo, and the Noli Me Tangere. I think
Yeah. There's a
Rizal
three. There's a
presently,
third volume, but it didn't prosper.
yes, but I think, sir, there's a third book about Rizal, which is as
Mhm.
dramatic, which is full of emotions, and which is adventurous too. And that book is his life. And I want you to, if we can hear from you, what about his life uh, that moved you in the 35 years that he lived? What episode
Yeah.
in his life moved you personally?
I think the willpower to change things for the better. Especially when he was persecuted. Even start we could start in UST because of so many um, things that he did for in order to win in student contest. But there's an issue. No? So even during that time, he already knew that he will be persecuted as a Filipino. So he agreed and managed to go to Europe so that he could do something for the Filipinos because Spain, as we all know, is our mother country during the time. We are colony. So if he will be in Spain, organize Filipinos in Spain, and have some good representation in Spain, then there will be a change in the Philippines. I think that's very. It struck me because it's a lifetime campaign. I think since UST until his death, no, he's campaigning for our betterment. No? So it's very hard to do that, no? Unless you're really patriotic, nationalistic, and you really love your people and your country. You could do that. And I think that's the need today. People need that kind of perspective.